All right, welcome in. 2 days after Derby edition of BloodHorse Monday, Louie Rabaut, Sean Collins hanging out with you. Thanks so much for starting your racing week with BloodHorse here on the podcast. Sean, I know this is always a sad day for you. We are as far away from the Derby as we possibly can be. Do you collapse the night after Derby though, knowing that you got to get up early again, or is it still like, are you just kind of energized by the fact? But because by the way, we got a great race this year. Again, another very good rendition of the Kentucky Derby in edition 151 here. But what does Sean Collins do after I don't want to say your whole existence is built around the Derby, but man, it's darn close.
I mean, it pretty much is at this point. Yeah. But yeah, it's always like, getting home afterwards is depressing. It's like, man, it's over already.
I know.
But I have a couple Derby traditions that I still, carry on from when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we used to always have McDonald's on Derby Day.
I like that.
Because we were going to be sitting in front of the TV watching the race, so we didn't want to cook like a sit-down meal. So I grabbed McDonald's on the way home from the track to keep the tradition going.
Good.
Yeah, pretty much crawled into bed, crashed there like almost immediately, and then woke up again at 4:30 the next morning, because even though Derby's over, you got to go back and see the Derby winner the next morning. So I got 4 hours of sleep.
I remember a couple of years ago, they asked Nick Saban on the night of the national championship game, he's holding the crystal football, and they say, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And he said, "Well, recruiting window's open right now." And I think of that whenever I think of the trainers though, right? It's like, I remember I was talking to Brad Cox one time, and he had just won some huge race. And it's like, "Hey, what are you doing to celebrate?" He's like, "Getting up at 4 o'clock to go to work." Like, what kind of question is this? And so for sure, the day after a busy time on the backside still at Churchill Downs, you'll hear from many of the connections of Sovereignty, who does win Kentucky Derby 151, including a friend of the show, by the way, gets the BloodHorse Monday bump in Michael Banahan with Godolphin. They sweep the weekend with the Kentucky Oaks winner and Good Cheer, of course. And then, of course, Sovereignty on Saturday. You also hear from Junior Alvarado. Who else are we going to have in the program today?
Well, we're going to also talk to Bill Mott. His smile was so big the entire weekend. And, after even the next morning when all of us media members are hounding him, he still had a big smile on his face, was still saying yes to everything. You could see that he was really soaking it all in. I think he said in the press conference immediately after the race, like, you want to win no matter what, but winning it, seeing the horse cross the wire first, celebrating it in that moment definitely was a much better experience.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So certainly congratulations to all of those connections. Sovereignty, obviously very ready for the moment, ended up being my top pick. It was Rodriguez until the scratch, of course. Sometimes you fall backwards into the right pick there, but certainly, frankly, a worthy Derby winner. Did all of the right things, did all of the right work in a race that did have a lot of, calamity at the beginning, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to avoid some of that.
And he was involved in some
but
of
he was
it
involved
too.
in it as well and overcame it. And so, yes, a worthy Derby winner here. We go to the call of the Kentucky Derby here.
As they turn for home, and Sovereignty is coming with him on the outside. The two of them go right by with a furlong to run. Journalism and Sovereignty, nose to nose, down to the last 16th of a mile. Sovereignty has taken the lead. Journalism is second toward the inside. Baez is third, but it will be Sovereignty to rule the Kentucky Derby.
There you go, Larry Kalmus on the call, of course, NBC Sports there. Appreciate everyone over there. Sovereignty does rule indeed. Rules the day. Journalism, a very valiant effort in second, I thought. I think 3 of the horses that we're going to want to watch the rest of the year finished 1, 2, and 3 here, Sean. I think that's what's especially exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of years now where the Derby winner has not come back and won another race, and I think it was pretty cool to see it. I think the 3 horses that finished in the top 3, I think we went into the race expecting that these were 3 of the top horses. I think we came out of the race thinking these are the top 3 horses in this division.
It's interesting too to watch now as we have up on. And if you haven't watched us on YouTube or on Spotify, you're certainly welcome to go watch us on the video feed there, so you can hear all these things that we're talking about as far as videos and interviews and those sorts of things. You can see them as well. The slop at Churchill that day, they did such a great job with the surface itself that every runner who ran their race won their race, right? From Copion all the way down to what we saw in the Kentucky Derby. I think they deserve a bit of kudos for how well they handled the wet track that day.
Yeah, Churchill Downs track maintenance crew, they did a fantastic job. I walked on that track during the walkover, and it was actually, believe it or not, fairly easy to walk over. At least for me, I thought it was. You
don't weigh 1,000 pounds, but yes, right.
Well, yeah, I know they had a different experience, but it definitely.
I get it,
I wasn't getting stuck in it the way that I thought I was going to when I first walked out there. So they did a great job, keeping the water out of the track. That track's always, I think, had good reputation of being able to dry out, and also, I covered covered a couple of the turf races that day, and every person that I talked to after the race, I asked them, what do you think of the course? Did you think it was going to be a concern? They all complimented that the turf course was in great shape throughout the whole weekend. So they shout out to the track maintenance team there at Churchill Downs, and they had the track ready to go for that day.
And I want to be really clear. This is something I was critical about, was the turf course and how things were being handled in past years. And so I want to, whenever there's criticism, if there's a time for praise, then we should do that as well. And this weekend was a show of how well those courses are put together at Churchill Downs. They did a great job over that weekend. Look, you mentioned right before we went on air, is there a chance that actually the top 5, the top 10 are the actual top 10 horses that ran in this race? And I think that's such an interesting angle, young Sean Collins, for us to look at in this spot. So obviously we think of the top 3 in this spot as being ones that we're not just going to be talking about during May. We're going to be talking about them when we get to Saratoga, hopefully when we get to Del Mar in November. But a horse like Final Gambit, who we haven't mentioned yet for Brad Cox, again, just another example of a Ruby winner finishing in the top 5 of this race. One of the headlines of this weekend is that Ruby really matters for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah,
it still very much does. We can all kind of roll our eyes at it and they spell it STAAKS, these kinds of things. Oh, it's a gimmick, except that it isn't in the Kentucky Derby.
No, and he had a horrible trip, and he still came flying in and ended up finishing 4th here. And so that was he
was 15th after the first half mile of this race.
Yes. Yeah, he was well back there, and Luan Machado was able to somehow find a way through and come flying down the center to get that 4th place. But big performance from him. But yeah, as you mentioned, I said to you before the show, it was one of the first times, or one of the few times, where we actually had who coming out of the race we think are the top 10 horses in the division finish in the top 10 places in the Derby. So top 10, we had Sovereignty, Journalism, Baeza, Final Gambit, Owen Almighty, Burnham Square, Sandman, East Avenue, Chunk of Gold, and Tistastic.
Right.
Maybe not finishing in exact order that we would rank them.
Sure.
But
who's in the bottom 10 that would be in your top 10? Is it someone like Luxor Cafe? Is it a Cole Battle? Who is it?
Luxor Cafe, I would say no, just because we hadn't seen him against these kind of horses in America. And he did get a very rough trip here, so I'm not going to discount him. But at least if I was ranking the top 10 horses in this field, I don't think I would put him in it. And then
never better than 8th during this Kentucky Derby.
Yeah. And then Cole Battle, I think maybe I would switch like Cole Battle with like a Chunk of Gold type of thing, just because Cole Battle is a grade 2 winner. Chunk of Gold hasn't gotten that stakes win yet. So I'd maybe switch that. And then you have the question mark of Citizen Bull. Maybe he's one of the better horses in the race, just at shorter distances. Maybe this just isn't, the mud, the distance. But outside of those, I mean, when you really look at it, it's almost like the top 10 3-year-olds kind of split in half. The top 10 were up in the top half. The bottom 10 in this race I guess the bottom 9 in this race were in the bottom 9. I think kind of felt that that's how they ended up running.
The other way to look at this, for me at least, is in that bottom 10. I wonder if 5, 6, even 7 of them don't do something different than we saw them do on Saturday. A Flying Mohawk going back to the grass, almost certainly. I wonder if we won't see a Neo Equos going one turn very, very soon. Those kinds of things where, hey, you got to try the Derby, but hey, this wasn't what they were meant to do. I have the cups upstairs, that the unofficial Derby cup that has all the last place finishers on it. Whitmore's on that cup. Mendelssohn's on that cup. Good horses don't always finish in the top 10 of this race. And so this might have just been a case of a group that just the last 10, like you mentioned, they might just need to go back to what they're better at.
But the point that I'm thinking of here, you go back last year, Fierceness is in the bottom 10. Obviously, you would come out of that race saying he's one of the top 10 3-year-olds, even though he finished, I think, like 17th. He was still in the top 10. You go back Cyberknife when he finished in the back of the field 2022. He was the Arkansas Derby winner going in. He was the Haskell winner coming out. And so you look at those and you're like, okay, there were horses that, if you were to rank them after the Derby, there were horses that finished in the bottom 10 that you would still have in your top 10 3-year-olds. This year, I think we pretty much, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, we pretty much the top 10 that we would come out of this race ranking, maybe different orders, but they all finished in those top spots.
A fascinating Derby for sure, but that top 10, as Sean points out, almost certainly the top 10 that we think of. Let's do the Owen Almighty thing.
He ran huge.
Unbelievable.
Shout out to Owen Almighty, because there was a moment where he turned for home. Everybody's saying he's got no shot. Why are they running in the race? Right? I had a solid 5 seconds there at the top of the stretch where I said to myself, oh my God, Owen Almighty's going to win the Kentucky Derby. That's how great of a race he ran. And, he ended up, probably hitting that distance wall a little bit at the end, or maybe it was just that the other horses that were coming from the back of the pack ended up outrunning him there in that final stage. But man, he ran huge and proved all those doubters wrong, didn't he?
Maybe even his own trainer, who really had questions
Yeah.
about the 10 furlongs throughout the process. But something about him, Sean, that I would, like to bring to the show is I am just a fan of horses that I know what kind of effort level I'm going to get. One of the great things about Torpedo Anna, even in defeat this weekend, she fought all the way through all the pressure and all the bouncing around and everything else. She really tried to win that race. Owen Almighty, every time he steps on the track, gives you an incredibly honest effort.
He gives it his all every
time.
You
know what you're going to get. And that's the kind of horse, man. I hope he's around this year, next year. We get to see him, grow up a little bit. Because I think if he grows into that body, one-turn mile kind of horse, a Met Mile horse next year, that kind of thing, I think he could be that.
And they're looking at Woody Stevens right now, potentially on. That would be a perfect spot for him. So, I think he proved himself that no matter what the race scenario is, no matter what the distance is, he's going to give it his all. And was glad to see him do it. He was getting a lot of flack earlier in the week, so I was glad to see him prove all the doubters wrong.
Yeah, I remember when he drew the 20 and met a bunch of people like, oh, okay, that's enough of that.
Yep.
And now top
there
five.
he is.
There it is. Big old check again. Having a great 3-year-old season is Owen Almighty. We see the points, top points earner in Burnham Square. Brian Hernandez gets the mount here, makes his best run very, very late. Incredibly difficult trip here. It could just say in his comment line on Equibase here, it could just say, yo, it didn't work out very well. Something like this, something like that.
Brutal trip.
A brutal trip for him. Top points earner in this one. Wouldn't be stunned to see him very, very good in the Belmont, for example.
Oh yeah. And honestly, they might even end up going Preakness here.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to see Ian Wilkes the day after, but I talked to his exercise rider, Mark Cutler, and he said he came out of the race perfect.
Good.
Wasn't blowing hard or anything, and he's the kind of horse that can kind of bounce quickly out of races. But I mean, we expected him to be way back in the field. That was what we were expecting, and he ended up kind of being in that stalking position right behind the pace. He was like 6th along the rail early, and then Admire Daytona just stopped right in front of him.
Right in front of him.
He went from 6th, like what does the chart end up saying where he ended up as far back as he?
Burnham Square was
as far back.
Dropped back to 12.
It says 12th. I think if you go between that where it says 12th and when he came back up to 11th or something on there, I think he actually dropped back to like 15th or 16th at one point, and then he comes all the way back and still finishes 6th. Yeah. So we talked about it when he won the Holy Bull. He had that big move. And then he stopped, and then he made the big move again. We saw that here. He got completely stopped all the way in the back of the field and then came back up and got 6th. I think he's probably the most live in one of these next few spots if he can get a clean trip.
Fascinating part of the betting here, by the way. The longest shot on the board was less than 43-1.
Yeah.
Because people have watched too many 80-1 shots win this.
You always see a couple of years after those big long shots that the odds just don't get as high.
Correct. Because everybody's trying to watch out for it.
Once you forget, once the general public forgets,
right? That's 5 years out, right?
Yeah, something like that. But once the general public forgets and you start seeing those 60, 70, 80-1s, that's usually when one of them hits.
Go ahead and jump on it. That's exactly right. Sovereignty just did pay a healthy $17.96 to win.
I know that's
pretty good for second choice, right? Or maybe was he third?
He ended up being third choice. Okay. I don't know how he ended up being third choice but
Luxor Cafe jumped second.
No, Sandman was second.
Oh, that's
choice.
right. Sandman. Pardon me.
So and Luxor Cafe actually got close. So that was probably all the Japanese money coming in.
Yeah, we waited for everyone to wake up in Japan, and then all of a sudden all that money.
I know because he was not
come in.
He was not that low for most of the day.
About 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
A little bit $25 or 25 cents total in a difference of the odds to 1 there. What do you make of how Sandman rallied? I would love him if the Belmont were at, Belmont.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a mile and a quarter, at Saratoga this year. What do we make of Sandman? Does he feel like a Sierra Leone type where he's going to pick off one of these again, but he's going to need the right trip?
I could see him picking off. He didn't like the mud. That's what Mark Cassidy told me yesterday morning. It's just not necessarily the running on the mud, but he in the early stages he was really unsettled with getting the kickback in the face from the mud. So I think that was the main player for him. He still made a nice run. He was wide throughout the whole far turn, so he still made a nice run. But I think if we see the Belmont on a fast track, like you said, I would love to see him at 1.5 miles in the Belmont. Unfortunately, we're not going to get that this year, so maybe that opens the door for someone else. If the Belmont was going to be 1.5 miles, I'd be all over him. Tappets love that 1.5 miles of the Belmont.
Not even
so I'd be all over him in that spot
for sure. Journalism. We haven't really talked about him yet.
Yeah.
And I thought a couple of things. I thought he showed himself very well. I thought Umberto gave him a great shot, and I don't think they have anything to be sorry about. I don't think they have anything to be ashamed of. It's got to be a tough pill to swallow to finish second in the Kentucky Derby, get all the way there. I'm positive. But, we've talked with Aaron Wellman. I find him to be a realist. I find him to be, there's no better way than saying that he just gets it.
Yeah.
And it's tough to get it when it's the Derby, I'm sure. But journalism moving forward, did this change your opinion about him? Because for me, it simply did not. I was very impressed with him on Saturday.
He ran a winning race. It was just Sovereignty ran a little bit better. I think these are the two best 3-year-olds in the country coming out of this weekend. I think that they proved that. I think they ran like it. And, if they run the race again, maybe, and if they run it on a fast track, maybe it's slightly different, but I still think they're the top two. And so I don't think he lost anything in defeat here because, this is the exciting part about the Derby. You have all these theories going in. You have these ideas of who's the best horse in the country. And then it's finally where the East Coast, the West Coast, the horses that are running down south, it's where they finally get to meet. We finally get to figure it out. Yep. And it just turned out that on this day, Sovereignty was just a little bit better than Journalism was. But Journalism lost nothing in defeat here, especially first time on a muddy track.
Totally agree. Who in the bottom 10 do you expect to bounce back into something significant as a 3-year-old? So not at any point in their career, but this year as a 3-year-old. Is there one, maybe if they go back and change up their style? I'll be honest. I think like a E014 actually could be a really good horse moving forward.
I think E014 could be really good, and especially some of the smaller stakes that they have down in Florida. No Gulfstream, I think he could definitely tear through that circuit. Yes. Coal Battle, I think is going to be.
By the way, that's a good way to pick up a bunch of good checks for your
ownership. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I think Coal Battle is going to be really good in that. The second tier of these summer 3-year-old races. So
he looks like a Matt Winn winner to me. Yeah. Thank you. Gosh almighty.
The Matt Winn.
In the same spot. Yes.
You got the Matt Winn, the Ohio Derby,
Society man in the best way.
Yeah.
Right. And he absolutely does. And again, the trip in a 19 horse field.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck. And he's already a small horse to begin with. Get him in a 9-12 horse field and a Matt Winn, give him a chance to get out there. I'm with you. I know Frank was really high on him as well. Yeah. Coming out of that Arkansas road to the Derby. I don't think we've seen all of his best running. At least I hope not. Lonnie Briley, of course, a cool story this year, but I would like to think we'll see him in a Matt Winn kind of race, or, even these regional Midwest Derbies now, man, Ohio, Iowa, Indiana, West Virginia, that's big money, man.
Exactly.
They're all graded. I mean, you can really clean up with some of these Derbies. It'll be fun to watch which of these horses end up in those spots as well.
Yeah. And then, maybe, he spends his summer doing those kind of Midwest Derbies and then ends up in a race like the Pennsylvania Derby, try to take a shot at the grade 1 down the line. I think that'd be a good path for him. And I think Flying Mohawk did not run well here. I think once he gets back on the turf, I think he could be a huge player
Ellis
in that turf
Park
division.
Especially like maybe Kentucky Downs preview day.
Yeah.
Something like that, get him back and that kind of thing. Find out if he's good at Kentucky Downs. Why not? Right.
Yeah.
And so interesting set of horses here as far as what they might be doing moving forward. But I thought, Sean, like you said earlier, we saw the very best of the 3-year-old dirt males finish in the top 5 here.
Yes.
And that's the good news. Do you think Final Gambit continues as a dirt horse now?
Well, I think the option's definitely there. He ran well enough to earn another shot at it, I think. And so
is there just a chance he's just good?
I think he's just good.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah.
I think it just kind of happened where he took a little longer to develop. That
right.
led to Brad leaving him at Turfway for the winter as kind of the place to develop him. And now he's going to be going on to bigger and better things.
Yeah. So there's your Derby review. And of course, we want to thank our friends at OBS. The weather isn't the only thing that heats up in June. We could use some heating up.
Yeah,
we could really use some heating up. So OBS help us out. Have produced 2-time Breeders' Cup winners Stormy Liberal and Golden Sense, as well as Grade 1 winners Adair Manor, Yalpone, and Warlike Goddess. The OBS June 2-year-olds and horses of racing age sale is the place to find ready-made talent ahead of the summer's top races. Before the juvenile action season comes to an end, come see what the 2-year-old source to the world has to offer at OBS June 17 and 18. Been hanging out with us since the beginning. We love the folks down there at OBS. Got to see some of them over the weekend as well at Churchill Downs. Very, very appreciative of them hanging out with us. Speaking of hanging out, you went back to the barns, of course, day after Derby. Michael Banahan, friend of the show. You're welcome, Michael. And the little BloodHorse Monday bump for him.
How about a lot of our guests that we had on the weeks ahead of the Derby? I just want to point this out. We had quite a few guests. They all ran very well. We had Michael Banahan on for Sovereignty. We had Aaron Wellman and Umberto on for journalism. We did not have anybody from Baeza, but
Brad
for Final Gambit. And then we had Hunter Rankin on for Owen Almighty's, and we had Ian Wilkes on our second episode for Burnham Square. So
that's 5 of the top 6.
So if you have a Derby horse, get on this podcast next year. If you want to make sure that you're, tuning in, that you're joining us.
If you want a 6-figure check, you got to talk to Sean. You understand that's how this works. It is
Answer my text messages when I reach out to you.
That's all it is. Talk to Sean Collins, but you did talk with Michael Banahan. This is a guy was very, and I appreciate when guys do this, or anyone, frankly, when they tell you what the goals are and they don't hide from it. The goal for Godolphin was to win a Derby.
Yeah.
And they get it done this weekend. It's a reminder for those of us who do this, how hard it is just to do it. Steve Asmussen has all the wins. It doesn't matter for the Derby purposes, right? Godolphin's got all of the resources forever. Until Saturday, it didn't matter for their Derby win totals, right? That kind of thing. That's all different now. So let's hear from Michael Banahan. He's with us, Sean. This was backside Churchill Downs yesterday after Kentucky Derby 151 and Sovereignty getting the win.
So I'm here with Michael Banahan the morning after winning the Kentucky Derby with Sovereignty at Churchill Downs. Michael, just take me through what that moment was like yesterday.
It was so exhilarating. It's hard to put it into words. It's the most iconic race in America to try and win. We've always wanted to try and get there. The zenith of racing in America, and we've had a couple of opportunities in the past, didn't quite get there. So to be able to do that yesterday with the team, with Bill Mott's team, with our own team, and so many people up here that could share in the moment, it was so special for us.
You mentioned, having those opportunities before. I know Essential Quality is one that you guys talk about a lot, where, he ended up 4th in the Derby across the finish line. Does it make it more rewarding getting it this time, having some past, not successes in the race?
Not really, because I would have loved if Essential Quality won it, and he could have been the second one. So I don't think you'd ever turn down one, but it is extremely rewarding to be able to do it with a homebred as well. And that makes it so rewarding to be able to do that for the whole team that we have here in Kentucky. To do it, we're a Kentucky-based operation in the US, and to be able to do it at our signature racetrack in Kentucky to win a classic is just unbelievable.
Well, Sheikh Mohammed, he's been trying to win this race for so long. Just take me through his devotion to trying to win the Kentucky Derby and just his devotion to winning big races across the world in general.
Well, I think that's the point. He has this, came up with the Godolphin operation to try and win and compete at the global stage with the best races in the world. And the Kentucky Derby is one of those races, the Breeders' Cups, any of the Triple Crown races, and then, races in Europe that are iconic, the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, the Epsom Derby, the 2000 Guineas, any of the classics over there, in Australia, Melbourne Cups, or whatever it might be. He's a competitor, loves to compete, he's a sportsman above it all, and likes to compete in those type of races, and have the opportunity to win them as well.
I know Bill Mott has talked a lot about the teamwork that goes into getting a horse ready for this, to get a horse to win this race. Just talk to me a little bit about the Godolphin team that you guys have here at Kentucky, everybody from the breeding side to the racing side, how you manage that whole operation.
Well, we have a great team, and everyone plays their part, no matter what role they play in it, and love having, it's so wonderful that Kentucky is the zenith of racing in America at the moment, where we can enjoy seeing our horses run, be it Churchill Downs, Keeneland, Ellis Park, Turfway Park. So it's so great and rewarding to have all our team so involved in it. They're very engaged, and we have a hard-working team, from the people that are foaling out the mares to raising the yearlings, to rehabbing them, to get them back on the track if they have minor injuries. So everyone plays a very, very important role, a vital role, and we've got great leadership with Dan Pride as our CEO, all the way down through to to our night watch people. So it's a great team effort, and that's what it takes to be able to have big days like we had yesterday and big weekends like we've had.
Just tell me a little bit about what Sovereignty has in his pedigree.
Well, it hasn't been one of our longest duration mares with Crown. She was a purchased mare, and unfortunately she didn't make it at the racetrack, but she was a beautiful mare, and we gave her every chance to become a good brood mare. It was a big play to go to Into Mischief she's gone into Mischief 3 times in a row. It was a big play to go there, but we had a lot of faith in the family with her physical qualities. We thought it was the right mare to go to him as well. We were fortunate that we had a really nice filly called Jane Grey that Bill also trained, that won up in Saratoga. Looked like she had a lot of talent. Didn't quite get to the heights of Sovereignty, but it encouraged us to go back into Mischief as well. And it's a wonderful family. You go back to probably Good Cheer. We've had that family a lot longer. When we acquired Stoner Side, and we had a Wedding Toast who Ciara McLaughlin trained for a couple of Grade 1 wins for us, and she's turned into a good brood mare. Had a nice stakes winner by Dubai out in Dubai, and has come up with a wonderful filly, as she is undefeated in Good Cheer. So to develop those families, and for the boss to give us the opportunity to develop them, is so rewarding for us, and for him to be able to compete at that level and being able to do that is very rewarding.
You mentioned Good Cheer. You guys won the Kentucky Oaks the day before, so pulling off that Oaks Derby double. Last fall, we were here October 27th for the Street Sense Stakes and the Rags to Riches Stakes, back-to-back races. Good Cheer, Sovereignty win both of those. You told me at the time that we're set up pretty well for a couple months down the line. Seems like that all worked out. Just how do you keep those horses from that point to get them to this point?
Well, we've got 5 really, really top-class trainers here in America, great horsemen that can develop these horses for us. So we can see that from when the 2-year-olds come into them in May, June time, and how they can develop them, take them through those early steps, stair-step along the way to be able to develop those horses. It was, Brad did a wonderful job at Good Cheer, from a maiden to an allowance win to a listed win to a graded win, to eventually culminating in the Oaks and the Grade 1 win. That's how important it is to get those. You can't miss those steps and try and accelerate them. And then you'll probably ask the question, well, we did that a little bit with Sovereignty. But we feel like, he ran so well in those maidens. Another stride after the wire, he would have broken his maiden. So we sort of felt with enough confidence that let's get him into a graded race, especially having to hear at Churchill 2 turns that was going to help him and be in his wheelhouse. And having at Churchill Downs, in the back of our mind, I think everyone that has a nice 2-year-old is hoping to get to Churchill Downs in the first weekend of May. And he was one of those horses that we had high hopes for. A lot of times it doesn't turn out like that, but we were very fortunate this year that it did.
Now, I know we had you on the podcast a couple of weeks ago after his Fountain of Youth win, but just remind all our viewers, how did you get involved with Godolphin originally, and what does this win, both these wins, the Derby and the Oaks, mean for you personally?
Well, I was fortunate enough. I actually worked for Bill Mott at the time when I got a phone call from Liam O'Rourke in Newmarket in England. And there was an opportunity to go over there and manage one of the farms over there under his direction. And I went over for an interview, jumped at the chance to join up with the team, and it was Darley at the time, and had some wonderful years over in Newmarket. And when we bought our first farm here in Kentucky, Raceland Farm from Claiborne, and the Hancock family, and it had raised some wonderful horses over its time. And so Godolphin in America, then Darley transitioned into Godolphin, and a lot of growth over the time here from being more of a having a broodmare band to source horses to run in Europe more than anything else, and transitioned more into a racing stable in America then, and it developed over time, and we ended up having a couple of nice stallions, elusive quality and quite American, that stood at Sheikh Maktoum's farm, Gainsborough, and we wanted to have a roster of stallions here in the US, and ended up purchasing Jolly Ball Farm for doing that, and we've had some very, very nice stallions that have come through that, and it just develops over time, and it's been such a great ride to be with Godolphin for that long. I've been personally with Godolphin since 1993, and it's been a wonderful ride, and so grateful to have been an employee of Sheikh Mohammed's for all that time.
Well, you mentioned Mott there. Just tell me about your relationship with Bill Mott over the years.
Well, when I was a younger man, I wanted to try and get all the experience that I could, be it on the breeding side of it or on the racing side of it, and I felt like I needed to figure out what these horses went through when they came to the racetrack, how they need to be developed, and Bill Mott was the up-and-coming trainer in the US at the time, and I secured a job with him, and I'd worked for different trainers. I worked for Colin Hayes in Australia, who's a legendary trainer down there, and a leading trainer in the UK called Guy Harwood, and were with those trainers at the height of their powers, tried to absorb as much as I could through them, and went back to probably original roots from the breeding farms, and so it's just been a brilliant ride, and been always very friendly with Bill. He's an amazing horseman, and you can see that the people that he has working for him, they're here 10, 15, 20 years. His assistant trainer's been with him a long time, so I think that shows you the quality of the man that he is, and how people enjoy working for him, and he has a great team ethos for keeping those people around for a long time, and they enjoy working for him.
Now, before I let you go here, got to ask the obvious question. 2 weeks from now, we're going to have the Preakness Stakes in Baltimore. I know you guys are going to see how he comes out of the race, do all those kind of standard checks, but just what are your thoughts right now on the Preakness?
Well, the Preakness obviously is an iconic race, the middle of crown, Triple Crown. We would, we'd love to have an opportunity to go there. We won it before Bernardini, and obviously he didn't quite make the Derby. He was a little bit of a tiny late developer, and we'll certainly give it due consideration. And as we always do with all our horses, they'll tell us what direction to go in, and we'll do the right thing for them. And if Bill and his team are encouraged the way he comes out of the race, how he goes back to the racetrack, and we want to go down that path, we'll certainly have a good conversation about it. But first and foremost, it'll be what's the right thing for the horse, and where we need to get down the road. And as Bill alluded to already, it's a career that we want to have with him, and not just a 5-week spell. And so we'll take everything under consideration and then make a decision.
Now, I know it's only been a couple hours since you won the race, probably about 12 hours or so, but you're already starting to look at the 2-year-olds, thinking about next year's Derby?
Well, we Dan Pride and myself were down in Florida 2 weeks ago, and our last look at all the 2-year-olds down there, and just did our allocations. We'll be sending our list over to the trainers here on next week, and it's like Christmas Day for them to figure out who they're going to get. We have some nice 2-year-olds, probably stronger on the filly front than the colt front for next year, but we were very pleased that we have some nice horses to come into the 2-year-old year, and don't anticipate that we're going to have a stellar crop as we had last year, but hopefully we'll have some nice ones.
Awesome. Well, we hope to see you have the opportunity again next year with a couple more horses. Thank you so much for taking the time with us here, and congratulations on winning the Kentucky Derby.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
So for our audience, and we live in a culture, Sean, where people get, criticism is it happens a lot, but praise does not. You did a spectacular job on the backside this year, to the point that the guy who runs Godolphin's operation in North America spent 12 full minutes with you 12 hours after winning the Kentucky Derby. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You did a spectacular job this year. As your colleague, I wanted to tell you that. Some of us cannot do what you do, and you pick up a lot of slack for those of us who cannot, so that we can do this and see these interviews and all of us can enjoy them together. So thank you for doing all the hard work. I know you love it. I know you love it, but still, the work is appreciated.
Thank you.
There's a lot to unpack from that.
Yes.
But number one, you get the sense from him. Do you think, and I have a very distinct answer about this. Do you think he was happy, more happy that he won, or more relieved that they won the Kentucky Derby? I'm leaning happy.
I'm leaning happy.
Big time. And that's cool, because it would be easy to be in his spot and feel all of the Godolphin pressure.
Oh yeah.
With how well things are going all over the world right now with Godolphin. Friday, Good Cheer wins the thing. Like you could have a moment of just exhale after Sovereignty crosses that finish line. And he's not. He's smiling. He's ready, right?
He's
was
talking
about
it all in.
That's exactly right. And so for me, that was really great to see. And look, I'm biased here. He's been on the show. He was very kind to us. He's kind when we've seen him at Turfway, at Churchill, and different things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a nice reminder too, on this show especially. It is not, you see a big operation and you assume it's faceless. It isn't.
Yeah.
These are people. He talks about the farm every time you talk to him. Every time we hear about the farm and the people on the farm and how they operate, who the 2-year-olds are going to be in the next year, he just tells you, we think the filly crop's a little better.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for telling us. Good to know. We'll get into the Good Cheer stuff later, by the way. We do have sound for Brad Cox as well. Your main takeaway from this is what?
Well, just, I think, as you just said, one of the things to reiterate here is just how many people are involved in making an operation like Godolphin run. Because, I know a lot of times you see the silks, Sheikh Mohammed's in charge of the operation, but especially like for the American operation here, everybody that's based in Kentucky at the farm, the fact that they have several different trainers, just how much effort and how much coordination goes into getting everybody on the same page to have the level of success they have. How many Eclipse Awards have they won in a row on both the owner and breeder side?
Yeah, I think it's 4.
And that doesn't happen just,
doesn't happen chance ever.
You can buy expensive horses and have that success, but just, you heard him talking about the pedigree aspect of it, just the mindset of what they're looking for when they're buying their brood mares and when they're pairing them to stallions, like into Mischief when he went into that, and just the amount of work that goes into that. It's like, yes, it's easier if you have a lot of money and you can buy a lot of different horses, but we've seen with Godolphin, they have not won the Derby until this point.
Right.
And so, but they have been investing in the bloodlines. They've been investing in trying to, breed these winners themselves. They did it with a homebred. They finally broke through, both with Good Cheer and Sovereignty, both homebreds. And I think that's a real testament to everybody in that operation and all the hard work that they do.
One of the things that the director of North American operations for Godolphin just said was how much he loves Turfway Park.
Yeah.
I'll take things I wouldn't have expected to hear 5 years ago for a billion, Alex. It's a remarkable shift of what's happened in Kentucky. It's interesting to hear Godolphin praising Ellis Park.
Yeah.
Right? In the 2-year-old program, we're watching the elevation of the things that are happening in Kentucky right now. And Godolphin is a big part of it. Let's not mince words about that. Them having those horses here running in those programs is a huge boon for the area.
Yeah.
It's not even a question because, Brad Cox based here, we're starting to see, Hardy get some horses from them as well, but they're based at Turfway Park.
Yeah.
Right. This kind of stuff. So it's interesting. We see Michael at Turfway all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So this is an operation that has really chosen Kentucky at the outset and seems to have really gone all in on Kentucky as well.
Yes. Yeah, definitely seems that way. They are involved pretty much in every single meet. They're usually right there at the top of these owner standings.
Correct.
Every single meet that we have at all 5 racetracks.
It is a remarkable thing to watch with them. The other part is with Banahan, listening to him talk about those coordinating efforts and how effortless it is for him to just rattle off who's where and what people are doing and who the trainers are and the farm hands and this stuff and this and this, the breeding, blah. It's impressive.
Yeah.
The catalog in that guy's head, it's churning and it's working, right? So it's really, really good. And you feel good for them. I wanted to ask this, is it in your mind, when we get a bigger operation like a Godolphin starting to win these things, Are we worried at all about competitive balance? I'm not personally, because we've seen lots of different people win the Derby and jump up and win these kinds of races. But I'm sure people out there are wondering about these questions. Like, when the Dodgers win the World Series, is that good for baseball? We ask these kinds of questions in other sports. Are you at all worried about that?
No, especially with the Derby, because I mean,
especially the Derby.
The thing that is unique about the Kentucky Derby is everybody has their shot at it. I mean, you saw it in this field. You had a couple horses that were worth $1 million, and then you had Chunk of Gold who was in there 2,500. It's one of those races where anybody has a chance. We've had a couple of years where the smaller guys won. You think back to Rich Strike. You think about the ownership connections with Mystic Dan last year, where the big names were not winning. And then every once in a while, you're going to get that big name that does win. And sometimes you get them winning multiple times. We'll see if Godolphin ends up getting more winners down the line. But I think that's one of the unique things about the Derby is every year it could be the big guy, it could be the little guy, and I think that's what keeps everybody so focused on trying to win that race, because they know that they have a shot if they have the right horse.
If you are the Preakness and you hear him call the Preakness a prestigious race and talk about the Triple Crown the way he did, do you feel good or bad right now?
I'd feel good about that.
I agree with you.
It's always hard to read because every year coming out of the race, it's always, we want to make sure the horse is okay. We want to check on the horse and everything like that.
Which by the way, that's
100% what you should do. But that's always the same comment the day after, where it sounds like they're on the fence. 90% of the time they end up going to the Preakness because the horse bounces out okay.
Correct.
And so I know we'll get to our Bill Mott interview here in a little bit. Sovereignty did come out of the race with a slight scrape on his right front leg, just because of all that bouncing around at the start of the race that happened. But Mott said it's just a superficial. It wasn't a cut. It was just a scrape. It'll be fine, kind of thing. So as long as he bounces out of that, okay, nothing else pops up from that, I'd imagine there's a good shot we'll see him.
Did you see Sovereignty the morning after?
I did. He looked fantastic. He looked regal, and he came up to where the photographers were standing and just stared right at them, taking it all in, soaking it all in. That's one of my favorite things about the morning after the Derby. That's the first time I had the opportunity to see the horse the morning after the Derby. It was Rich Strike. And I always talk about how you could see the more laps around the barn he took and noticed the people taking the pictures. You could see it sink in that he realized he was the reason everybody was there. And so that's one of my favorite things about the day after the Derby, and Sovereignty. Definitely. You could see that moment in him. Sure. You could see that moment in him where he was just standing there, ears pricked, staring straight at the cameras and just posing for everybody.
It's the best, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is. The best it is. But those horses really do know exactly what's going on. Sovereignty seems to be that, because we've watched him now move through these races, through the series. And he makes, since the Street Sense at least, has made every right move in every race. He just ran out of time in the Florida Derby. Otherwise, he's been near perfect.
Well, speaking of the Street Sense, talk about how much expectations these guys had on him. You never see Mott, Godolphin entering a maiden in a stakes race like that, especially as a 2-year-old. I mean, we talked last week about Publisher being in this race as a maiden, but it's the Kentucky Derby. To run him in a stakes race, a grade 3 as a 2-year-old for Derby points, that's something these connections never really do. So that shows they've had so much
outside.
Yeah, they've had so many expectations.
I mean, all of the things they let him run from the 10 out of 10. By the way, if you go to the forum, I'm not even looking at it. I just remember because I picked him as a maiden thinking I was smarter than everyone.
And then everybody was the favorite. But the fact that he's a maiden, he's the favorite in the race. There's been a lot of high expectations on this horse for a long time, and he proved everybody right.
Definitely did. Fulfills all of those things. Here's Junior Alvarado, by the way, winning jockey here. In the post-game press conference, I say post-game, post-race.
Yeah, what sport are you in right now?
I did a radio show about basketball this morning. You settled down, but no, these press conferences have become very interesting the last couple of years. They used to just be coach speak or trainer speak or jockey speak, whatever you want to call it before. I feel like we're getting more different kinds of answers. Brad Cox had a really fascinating one about the Oaks Trail, the Derby Trail, for example, in his Oaks presser post-race with good cheer. I'm interested to hear Junior here, because I do think these guys have been a little more forthcoming in these interviews. So here's Junior Alvarado after the race, of course, the winning jockey aboard Sovereignty.
Yeah, he broke good. And I'll have to say probably the third or fourth jump after the break, the horse next to me on the outside kind of came right in front of me. And, I clip heels a little bit right there. So I'm thinking oh boy, I hope he didn't lose his shoes in this track like this. But, then have to kind of just keep going and, trying to save ground, trying to see my way. How could I get to save ground a little bit the first turn? And, I think everything was just, falling right into place for me. I got to save ground the first turn. And, when we turned the backside, he was still, traveling very beautifully. until, I would say we hit the 5 pole, and then that's when he kind of was saying to me, like, listen, I'm ready. So, from there I started picking it up. Didn't want to get too excited. And, right when we turned from home and I put him in the clear on the outside, I knew what he got. I knew what he's capable of, and he didn't disappoint me.
Junior, how much of any were you tracking journalism? It looked like you all kind of made your moves simultaneously almost.
Well, I was first, he got into a beautiful rhythm. So, and I knew I got Sandman like right behind on the outside. So I was like, before I make any move, I got to make sure, he don't get the jump on me. At the same time, I got to make sure too that he doesn't try to keep me boxed, So I'm, just trying to act like I was in a hurry. Then all of a sudden, I get to see where journalism was, and I let my horse kind of move a little bit forward, and then I could feel how Jose Ortiz started picking it up and tried to go with me, and after that, I think like every move I was making, I was just that horse was just there for me every single time, and like I said, I wouldn't be able to done that with a horse that I have to say I make probably between 6 to 7, 8 little move that he was there for me in each time.
Junior, heading into the final furlong, what did you see that made you say, I got this?
I think when we hit the 3 pole, I'm right behind journalism, and I know I probably would be able to move and get next to him right at that point, and I'm like just waiting. It's like I know I got him. I got them. So let me just wait a little bit more, and then right when we turn from home, put him in the clear, and I still, like I say, like let me just get there just little by little. I don't want to, like I say, waste my burst of punch right there and then get flat at the end. So we kind of like little by little inching it out. But I could feel it turning from home. He was gonna get there, and like I say, once we hit the 8 pole, like I knew like there is impossible way somebody's gonna be coming and beat me, because he was still running pretty hard at that point, and like I said, I always trust him. I knew what he was capable of, and like I said, it was just a great effort today.
Junior, I've asked the other two. Now I'd like to ask you what the Derby means to you, what winning it means.
Still sinking in. To be honest, it means the world to me. I for me and for my family. Coming from my country where, the only race that we were able to watch back there was just the Kentucky Derby. It was the only race from USA we were able to watch. And that little, start getting in my head. And I said, like, well, that would be nice, be the United States right in the Kentucky Derby. Then, little by little, I think, I started, point that out to make it come true, and I think today we just did that.
Junior, when you enter the spring on a horse this good, and then you have what happened at Gulfstream with the spill, how scary was that for you, knowing that possibly maybe you don't get this opportunity?
I was completely heartbroken. I thought that was it. I knew that was this horse. All along, I knew this was the right horse for me to win the Derby. And I always say, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But at the same time, like I say, like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get another horse like this if I don't get back on time. But once again, I got the call the next day when I get out of the hospital. Mr. Mott said, listen, you do what you need to do, and you'll get to ride all the horses back. Just I think that gave me a hell of a peace of mind, and to do what I needed to do the right way to recover properly, and I just did that.
Junior, you said it was still sinking in. When is it going to sink in?
I don't know. It's still, like I say, I try to think what word can I use when people ask me, like, what does it feel to win the Derby? And I don't know if I'm gonna be able actually to find the right word that can describe this feeling that I have in this right now.
2,237th win of his career for Junior Alvarado there in the Kentucky Derby. I think the cool underrated part of this is talking about the injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's something we acknowledge and we know about our sport, that it's high risk.
Yep.
It just is. And our jocks, we lost Tyler for the spring, for example, Tyler Gaffalione, of course, who certainly would have had a Derby mount in this case. And we would have figured prominently at Churchill during that week. Junior gets back and he mentions that Bill Mott says, hey, just get right. It's waiting for you when you get back. and just the peace of mind of that, because can you imagine you ride this horse in the Holy Bull or whatever, the Fountain of Youth, whatever, and he's off the bench cold. He runs the race that he does, and then you get hurt and you think, my God, I might miss out on this horse.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? So that story, I love that kind of stuff where Bill Mott's like, yo, no, this is a partnership. We're going to, you get better, buddy, and we're going to figure it out.
Well, and you heard that in Banahan's interview as well, when he was talking about Mott and the loyalty that Mott has, where you've had so many people in his operation that have been with him for decades at this point. And so, you know, for him to give Junior that peace of mind, Junior didn't have to sit back and worry about it. I remember I actually talked to Junior the morning before Sovereignty's last breeze.
He would not be the first jock to lose a Derby mount.
No, he would not
at all.
No.
So this is a legit concern on his end. Yes.
Yeah, but I talked to him the morning before his last breeze. He was standing by the stand, and I was asking him about that, and he said the same thing. Like, I never felt concerned that I wasn't going to be in the Derby, because that was just the confidence that Mott gave me, was the fact that, you know, he told me that this is my horse. I'm going to be able to get back on him. And, you know, there's probably that first moment when he realized he was injured. That was probably one of his first thoughts in his mind was, oh no, I'm not going to be able to ride Sovereignty, because that was the week of the Florida Derby. So it was right on top. He was already named to ride in that race. He had to get replaced in that race, depending on what the injury was. Like Tyler, for example, because Tyler got hurt that week as well. He might not have made the Derby, depending on how bad the injury was. So the fact that it was an injury that he could be back in time to ride this race, he didn't lose the mount. And then on top of that, he comes back and rides a perfect race here. Perfect stocking trip, keeping an eye on journalism, keeping an eye on where Sandman was on his outside. He knew that those were probably the two horses he had to worry about the most.
Yep.
And he played it perfectly, got the perfect.
You heard a mention of Jose Ortiz in that, in that clip. You're right.
And getting him to the rail by the time they hit the finish line the first time, from all the way out, and I guess it ended up being post 16 with the two scratches, but for not 17, he lucked out that he got out of the 17. But do
you kind of wish he had stayed in the 17 and won?
Well, he wouldn't have won.
But just knock it out, just be done with it.
Well, it wouldn't have happened. Journalism would have ended up holding on if he was on 17. But but the perfect ride for him to get him down on the rail would have been. Or I mean, we saw Brian Hernandez have that perfect rail skimming ride last year. I think Junior, it was definitely a different trip this year, because the post position and everything. But I think Junior, he gave a classic Derby ride here.
Reminiscent of Orb, frankly, in 2013, right? Very similar sort. Wetter this Saturday than it was for Orb, but a lot of moisture in the track for Orb. Had to make that wide run on the final turn. Sovereignty just put all the pieces together there. You brought up Brian Hernandez Jr., and I wrote last year after the Derby that what happened between the Oaks and the Derby for Brian is it cemented his status as a top jockey in our sport in North America. Period. Conversation over. There's no debating. If you win those two races back to back, I don't care how good your horses are. That's you showing on a global stage how great you are. Highest pressure moments that you can be in our sport. $1.5 million race, $5 million race. Perfect trips in both.
Yeah.
Did Junior do that this weekend? Does this cement him as one of the top? Or was he already there? Where does Sean Collins kind of put him? Because for me, this was to be more confirmation of his quality.
I agree. Because I mean, I feel like he's one of those guys. He never gets the credit for being
that might be right.
One of the top jockeys. I mean, he just won the Saudi Cup last year with Senor Buscador, long shot. He's, we saw him all those great
art collector
rides
in the Pegasus,
collector in the Pegasus, all those great rides on Cody's Wish. All those
totally
big races that he's running recently, and he never gets the credit of the Ortiz brothers or Prat or any of those guys. But he always, I mean, you see him in. It's not a surprise when you see him in the winner's circle, these big races, because you're like, oh yeah, Junior can ride these races and he can win these races. And you give him a horse where he can work his magic on, like Sovereignty, he's going to do it.
Well, let's bring in our friend Frank Angst from BloodHorse, of course, and from bloodhorse.com. He's the editor there, and he joins us as he does most Mondays here on BloodHorse Monday. Wanted to get his thoughts here on the BH feature, the old BloodHorse feature. Frank, welcome in. Happy end of Derby. How you feeling? Did you get a nap in yesterday? How'd you do?
Sovereignty was my second pick, so I had journalism, so I had the exacta. But
there you go. That's pretty.
So I hit a few backups, but not as well as I would have done with journalism. But Sovereignty made a heck of a lot of sense. I mean, it's the second time. It seems like if the Florida Derby winner doesn't make the Derby, get on the Florida Derby runner-up, because it's happened twice. The last two times it's happened, that's been the winner. Right. But Sovereignty. I'm thrilled for all the people that got to see Sovereignty this weekend, because Sean and I and yourself, Louie, we've seen him in the mornings, and he looks like a darn 5-year-old. I mean, he's so impressive to see in person. I mean, a terrific horse for the eye and a terrific horse to watch run. So it was a great Derby and terrific ratings on NBC. And boy,
Great
I would
point.
love to see some of these top horses come back in the Preakness because the interest was there, and it's the horses like these that generate that interest. And if that can carry into Preakness, that would be great for the whole sport.
Yeah, you mentioned the number on NBC, highest in about a quarter century, frankly. Frank, the highest for NBC ever since they've started covering the Derby. Do you think that's something horse racing could parlay moving forward? Does it require a couple horses to go to the Preakness, or is maybe horse racing just becoming more part of that NBC zeitgeist?
I think a couple of things are going on, Louie. And one is it's a terrific crop of horses. It's terrific stories tied to these horses. So that's a great starting point for now. But I also think bigger picture that I think people have seen what the sport has done on the safety end. It's put a lot of investment and time, millions of dollars. You guys were talking about the track. I mean, we did have one injury Saturday early on the card, but the track was in great shape all week. Trainers have just put safety at the forefront. We have a regulatory system in place that's top notch now. I think people have noticed. You know, you don't have to be turned off by racing as a percentage of people were previously. And then you have a day like this, and you can really build on it. And as we didn't even talk about the older horses that were in action.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Raging Sea just putting on a show to knock off the horse of the year. We had Fierceness coming back, a champion at 2, who's still racing,
Track record.
and doing terrific things. He's probably will be at the top of the overall list this week, I would think.
Yep.
Mind Frame bounce back as Todd Pletcher had a huge weekend. So it's really great to see on a lot of fronts. Really encouraging.
I gotta say, one of the things that I wasn't ready for was there was no real spotlight on Bob Baffert being back.
Yeah.
It seemed almost like he was there and he was supposed to be there. It wasn't made into a big deal. And the other part was his horse wasn't really part of the equation, and it was still a huge number. So I was very encouraged by that as well. And I'll say this, Frank, I think for especially people, say in Sean's generation, your generation has something very cool that I'm very jealous of, which is you don't care about stuff, you care about experiences.
Yeah.
Right. And horse racing's an experience. And I think we have a chance, with days like this, Frank, to build something where especially younger people seeing the environments, maybe they think, maybe I'm going to go check Pimlico out and go to a Preakness or whatever it might be, something that's a little more accessible. Maybe they check out a regional Derby wherever they live, something like that. But I'm hopeful that we could build on these big days and show that the track is an event, right? Yeah. It's an experience to go. And so hopefully people will start to pick up on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's writing on my What's Going On Here column for the magazine, and I just had to document what's going on with Godolphin this weekend. I mean, it's arguably the greatest weekend an owner's ever had in racing, quite frankly. I mean, they won.
Great point.
They take the Kentucky Oaks on Friday with undefeated Good Cheer at that. Who she would be in the top 10 of 3-year-olds. We all know that. But yeah. And then it's 17 hours later, they win the 2,000 guineas with Ruling Court. A few hours after that, they take the Kentucky Derby with Sovereignty. And then about another 17 hours after that, they win the 1,000 guineas with Desert Flower. And they've just put a lot into it. And I heard what you're saying earlier about competitive balance. And I'll be cliche. There's a reason it's called the Sport of Kings. There's no salary cap. Yep. There's no luxury tax. If you have a passion and want to put a significant amount of money into this, but beyond that, with Godolphin, a significant amount of time.
Yes.
These are broodmare families that they've developed generation after generation after generation. I mean, they're not purchasing as many horses as they used to because they don't have to. They put the money in years ago, and they still put some money in at sales. Don't get me wrong, but it's not what it used to be as a percentage. And now we just see these terrific broodmares producing year after year. So, when racing has an underdog story, let's appreciate it, which I think everybody does. And those come along. We very much remember Rich Strike. It hasn't been that long. And there's many beyond that, Cole Battle and the terrific things he's done this year. So we have those stories, but it is a sport that it rewards people that put the most into it and have the resources to do it.
You know, it's interesting that you bring this up, Frank, because Godolphin does talk about their operation like the Irish talk about bloodlines in their, you know, in their runners and those kinds of things. Godolphin very much talks like that. And of course, Banahan coming from, you know, the Isles over there for sure, you get a sense that he's kind of the perfect person for what they want to do. Yeah. As far as keeping those bloodlines intact, you're talking about broodmare families. And you're totally right about this, by the way, where that takes time. That's a significant investment, not just in resources, but in time, like Frank mentioned. It's interesting to watch how all of those dynamics did all come together all around the world for a weekend. It was a remarkable thing to watch.
And the other thing that I have to note, which we touched on a few weeks ago, is I wrote about it in my dollars and cents column, that I really didn't think the tweak this year to the Derby point system that took away qualifying points if a field was too small, was smaller than 6 horses, they got docked points. And the reality of it was Baeza's connections had to really sweat out getting in the race. And I think maybe the Derby gods maybe sent a reminder to tweak that again, because the Santa Anita Derby winner runs second and Baeza runs third. So that I think going in, the Santa Anita Derby featured the top 2 ranked horses. At that point, it was Citizen Bull in journalism, Citizen Bull being a champion. And Baeza gets second in the Santa Anita Derby. That should put you in the Kentucky Derby. So I hope Churchill either gets rid of that altogether, or the other alternative I like is if they really want to, reduce the amount of points that go toward short fields, just take it off the back end. Don't award 5th place. Maybe don't award 4th place. But Baeza was nearly lost out on a classic placing because he wasn't given the opportunity. He had to have some horses removed from consideration and scratched to get in. So, I love that Churchill tries different things, a little bit different every year. But I hope on this one they change it again.
They do seem pliable, at least. I agree, Frank. So hopefully, yeah, I'm sure the conversations are constantly ongoing about the best way to go about it. Well, Sean's, I'm sure, already looking forward to September in the Iroquois and all those things.
Oh, yeah. We're already starting to look for options at the Iroquois. Let me make my prediction for Nitro Tap right
there. It
now.
is, Nitro Tap talk.
And as you said, Louie, earlier, Brad Cox brought up some maybe tweaking some points to where fillies can get in there, qualify for the race. I know, talking with people off the record, I know that's been considered over the years. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but the Derby it definitely draws more interest when a filly's in the race.
It really does. That's a true fact. Yes.
Listening to Brad continue his thought that evening, I don't think Good Cheer was ever really going to be that horse, but they do come along. Currently for a filly to get in, the problem with a filly getting in under the current system is they really have to me, if I had a top filly, you really would have to commit to it in those second last rung of races.
Yep.
So the 50 point to the winner races.
Yep.
And that's kind of early in the season at that point. Like you still want to win the Rachel Alexandra on the filly side or the corresponding races at that level, because you're not fully in on the Oak side yet. Right. And then if you were to wait, like Winning Colors won the Santa Anita Derby. If you were to wait for that round of races and it doesn't work out and your filly runs 5th or 6th, now you got some questions to answer when you're going into the Oaks. So I do think it's asking a lot of horsemen and connections under the current system to get in. I think it's a little bit unreasonable. I would like to see if maybe there's some possibility on that side to open up a different way. As Brad said, maybe your Oaks points count as half as much on the Derby side, something like that. And because Churchill wants to limit it, maybe it's just the top filly, and if that filly doesn't want to do it, they go on down the list. That's what they do for the Japan Road and the European Middle East Road. So
yeah, and in that case, if the horse needed to qualify based on points, you could then run in a 100-point race knowing it's worth 50 points for the Derby Trail as well, right? And then you don't have to hurt the confidence of the filly, right? In that case, right? If she runs
that's the whole thing, is you're just forcing that decision either really early or really late, and it's I can see where it'd be a tough call when you have a terrific filly. It's sort of asking you to make that call early. Like the way it's set up now, for the horses that have already shown an affinity for the synthetic, you can get in by running well in the Jeff Ruby, and then you take your shot on dirt in the Kentucky Derby. So that would be kind of maybe a similar setup for the fillies. You get your way in, and then you take your shot on Derby Day. I mean, all that said, on the other hand, I mean, our filly winners that have won the Kentucky Derby have, I don't know if it's all of them, but quite a few of them face males before Derby Day. So it's been done, but racing has changed quite a bit too. It's so you only get 2 or 3 shots to get points in a lot of ways. So if you burn one of them and it doesn't work out, all of a sudden you're kind of up against it.
It does seem like the preferred route is go win the Oaks and then figure out if you want to try the Preakness of the Belmont. So like with an Next or with a Rachel or something like that, or a Swiss Skydiver, what have you. It's interesting to watch the I hate to use this term, but the jockeying after that race to try to figure out what they're going to do. I'm with you, Frank. I think the Oaks, you heard Banahan after that, oh darn, had to do 2 press conferences this weekend. But you heard him in that Oaks press conference essentially say, that wasn't what we were thinking of with this horse, right? With this filly. We were thinking Oaks the whole time. And he was pretty fervent about that. And frankly, even moving forward, we're going to see her in the Acorn is essentially what I heard from him on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see her in the final 2 classics. And actually that brings up another little point. So Godolphin, they win those 4 races. The Kentucky Oaks technically isn't a classic. I think we're going to make it a mission at BloodHorse to get that changed, because it's just sort of a weird set of circumstances that has led to that. Basically, other countries have Triple Crowns for males and for fillies. Well, the U.S. doesn't have that. So there's no real – so like Britain, when their racing jurisdiction turns in what are the classics, they define those because it's one country, whereas the U.S. is state to state. So Kentucky can't really say this is the classic, without agreement from others. But boy, I really think we have 2 filly classics in the country currently, the Kentucky Oaks and the Alabama. I think those are our 2 classics, even though they're not technically classics under the International Cataloging and Standards book.
All right. Well, he's Frank Angst. What should we be looking for in the? Of course, we want people to sign up.
Obviously, the June issue will be our Kentucky Derby coverage, so that'll be one to look for, and it'll have all the races, all the photos, and terrific recaps and stories for sure.
There you go. All right. Well, he's Frank Angst, BloodHorse and bloodhorse.com. Go check out all of the great Derby recap coverage over there on the website as well. Frank, we appreciate you. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
There you go. Of course, we encourage you to go check out BloodHorse Magazine. QR code right there at the bottom of the screen. If you happen to be watching us there on screen at YouTube, you can go ahead and click on the QR code there. Of course, BloodHorse Magazine. Get that delivered to your house. Make your coffee table look nice and fresh. Yes, there you go. But we last connection of the Kentucky Derby winning connections here that we have not talked about is Bill Mott, trainer Bill Mott. Something that we talked about earlier in the show, of course, is Country House gets it via disqualification in 2019, of course, but gets to watch his horse cross the finish line first here. Very, very different experience here. Certainly he's been in the winner's circle before, but this one's got to feel a little different. Here's your time with him yesterday at the Barns at Churchill Downs.
I'm here with Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott the day after winning the Kentucky Derby with Sovereignty. It's still raining here at Churchill Downs, but something tells me you're starting to like that weather, having 2 wins in the rain in the Derby.
Well, it feels like it's a sunny day today. I know, we're not hampered by the rain. We weren't yesterday during the race, and right now we're feeling pretty good about it.
Just take me through that moment of watching him come down the stretch and ending up winning the race.
Well, I think I was very silent until they'd crossed the wire. I think I was, watching a moment that maybe I was even wondering whether it was really happening. And there was a lot of celebration after he hit the wire, and really a very, very emotional emotional feeling.
You mentioned yesterday at the press conference your first Kentucky Derby experience, listening to Proud Clarion win the race all the way back in 1967. Just kind of take us through your thoughts in that moment, and now thinking about the fact that you're here winning the race like this.
Well, back then, I mean, it was only a dream. I had never been to Churchill Downs, or probably never even been to Kentucky, and couldn't even, I was 14 years old and just getting started in horse racing and on a very minor circuit, and listening to the Derby and the call of the Derby, and I just never even imagined that I would ever set foot at Churchill Downs. And the way things have happened since then, being a regular here, and actually I've been in the barn we're standing in right now. I've been here for over 45 years. So it was like something that wasn't even a dream or even a thought. It's just pretty special.
Now, you've won so many big races across the world in your career, and you did win the Derby a few years ago by disqualification, but how big of an item was it on your bucket list just to have that experience of winning this race still?
It feeds into it that you want to come back. You want to come back and you want to do it, by finishing first. And that happened yesterday, and, so that's another dream come true.
How did he come out of the race? I know there was some bumping kind of in the early stages of the race. He got scraped up a little bit. Can you just give us an update on how he's doing and your thoughts on the Preakness?
Oh, overall, he's doing very well. I mean, his appetite is good. He feels good. He jogged good, and legs look good apart from, he did get a little scrape on his right front pastern from another horse, I think, and I believe it probably happened leaving the gate. But I think it's, something that we consider minor.
Well, congratulations on winning the Kentucky Derby here, Bill, and best of luck with the rest of this horse's career.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Bill Mott with our guy, of course, Sean Collins here. Completely ignored your question about the Preakness.
That's all right. We had Banahan answer that one, so
which is spectacular. But look, I appreciate the candor of these guys saying, "Yeah, I wanted the horse cross the line first."
Yeah,
right. I appreciate that very much.
One of the things I really took away both from the press conference right after the race, the press conference in the morning, and then that interview as well, is Bill Mott has won pretty much every big race that there is. He's been in this game for a long time. He's had such fantastic horses over the years, and you could still see, winning the Kentucky Derby, just the smile that was on his face the whole time. You could still see how much this meant to him. It's like, no matter how many big races that he's won, having won the Derby before via disqualification, you could see that this really still meant a lot to him. The fact that he now has that moment, he had that experience of watching his horse make the move, hit the wire first, and felt that enjoyment. It was probably unlike any other, no matter how many other races he's won, it was probably unlike any other race he's ever won before. And so it was cool seeing somebody that's been in the Hall of Fame for so many years, it's had so many great horses, still have that kind of reaction to winning this race. That just shows you the power of the Derby.
The Derby is quite powerful. Are you going to be okay now that it's over?
I will be temporarily for at least 2 weeks until the Preakness, and then whether
the sadness descends.
Yeah, well, usually the sadness starts descending once the Triple Crown is off the table.
Yeah.
So if Sovereignty wins, that's the joy will extend another 3 weeks. If he doesn't win or doesn't run, then the sadness will hit a little earlier. So,
well, here's to hoping several things. Here's to hoping the 19 of them came out well.
Yes.
Here's to hoping that many of them are well enough that they'd like to run in Pimlico.
Mm-hmm.
And here's to hoping that the Belmont's awesome too.
Yes.
How about that?
I think we're going to get...
By the way, I think the Accordion's going to set up actually
Yes.
really interestingly as well. Yes.
And the Belmont looks like it's setting up to have a pretty good field. The Preakness looks like, even from
how good is the Met Mile going to be? We didn't talk about those other hard races. What if we get Fierceness and Mindframe and in that Met Mile?
We're in for an exciting 5 weeks of racing.
Holy
I can tell you that.
This is where all of me being a little too excited about the 4-year-olds coming back is going to be totally right.
Yes.
I'm going to feel very good about it. Having made that point a long time ago. Again, hey, go subscribe right now to BloodHorse Daily. You get it's completely free, by the way, and just receive a daily update via PDF in your email, or go get the BloodHorse app right now. You can check out all our news there as well. And of course, sign up at bloodhorse.com under daily. We'd love to have you as part of what we do every single day here at BloodHorse. And of course, on the screen right now, that QR code for BloodHorse Magazine. Yeah, it's beautiful, people. That's all I can say. Photographers at BloodHorse, just amongst the very best in the world at what they do. So go get that checked out.
And you're going to want to make sure you subscribe now. So in
Get the
June,
Derby
you
episode.
can get all the Derby information, all the pictures from the Derby, everything in that June magazine.
Sean will sign it for you if you sign up.
Yeah, bring
You
it
can
to
do
me
that.
bring it to me if you see me at the track. I'll sign it for you.
By the way, we're going to start a new partnership this next Monday. We're going to be up at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
Mhm.
We're going to be up there a couple times this year. Really excited to do this. If your track would like us to be there, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you here at BloodHorse Monday. We'd love to be part of your program for sure. Excited to get up there, see Tammy and Eric and Rachel and Brian and all the good people up there just southeast of Indianapolis. We'll be up there later in the year ahead of the Grade 3 Indiana Derby, Grade 3 Indiana Oaks as well. Should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that partnership as well. But for Sean, I'm Louie. It's time to get into Preakness season. My
Time to get some
goodness,
sleep
already.
a little bit. I got 8 hours of sleep today. That's the most I've had in over a month.
Really proud of you, by the way.
I felt good.
All right. Well, he's Sean Collins. I'm Louie Rabaut. This has been BloodHorse Monday. We'll catch you next week. We'll be at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
The BloodHorse is dedicated to the improvement of thoroughbred breeding and racing for over 100 years. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and save BloodHorse Monday on all your platforms. For the latest news, analysis, and insights, visit us at bloodhorse.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.